All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, really deep into Mother Teresa.
Yeah, we are.
Her spiritual side, specifically, we're talking about prayer and what it meant to her life and how we can apply her wisdom to our own lives. We're going to
Wow.
be using the book Everything Starts from Prayer, Mother Teresa's Meditations on Spiritual Life.
For people of all faiths.
That's the key here.
Yeah,
So, this applies to anybody, whether you have a clear path or not, or you're still searching.
absolutely, absolutely.
And our goal today really is to understand this idea that everything starts from prayer, what Mother Teresa really meant by that and how that applied to her life and how we can look at it in ours.
Right.
And, obviously when we talk about Mother Teresa, the first thing that comes up is her service to others.
Correct.
But this book really gets into the core of where that comes from and how she, saw prayer as the foundation for everything.
It's so interesting, isn't it? We tend to think of her charitable works as her main thing, but this book reveals what fueled that work.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect title for this. Everything starts from prayer. But, for her, what did prayer actually look like?
Yes.
It wasn't just, a ritual or, a Sunday thing.
Right. It was so much more than just reciting words or going through the motions. She described prayer as walking in God's presence, turning to Him, lifting the heart to Him.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's about a constant connection, a turning towards a higher power throughout the day.
So it's not just about finding time to pray, but about having that mindset, that connection all the time.
Yeah, like a continuous conversation.
Yeah, and she actually said, you can pray while you work. Work doesn't stop prayer, and prayer doesn't stop work. It's just that small raising of the mind to him. It's not like you have to stop what you're doing to connect.
Exactly.
It's almost like a background hum, but a really beautiful one.
I love that background hum, yeah.
So how do we make that shift? How do we start to live our lives in that way?
Well, she talks a lot about intentionality, offering every word and action to God. Offer to God every word you say, every movement you make.
So it's like even if you're doing, the dishes or whatever, you can still be offering that to God.
Exactly. Finding that connection in even the most mundane tasks. It's about consciously dedicating everything we do.
And she said, we should make every effort to walk in the presence of God, to see God in all the persons we meet, to live our prayer throughout the day. It's like we're called to really put in the effort.
It's a conscious choice, an active striving to stay connected.
And this isn't just for, devout Catholics or anything. This collection was compiled by Anthony Stern to be ecumenical. He wanted it to reach everyone.
And Mother Teresa herself was incredibly open to other faiths.
Yeah, she was.
There's that great story, actually, about her praying with a terminally ill man. They each pray according to their own tradition, side by side. And she said, you say a prayer in your religion, and I will say a prayer as I know it. Together we will say this prayer, and it will be something beautiful for God.
So it's less about the specific religion and more about that connection.
Exactly, a connection to something larger than ourselves, however we understand that.
Yeah. And some of her quotes really, really drive that home. Like, castes and creeds mean nothing. It does not matter that they are not of my faith.
Right, her focus was on the human connection, the shared spirit.
And she even said, we should help the Hindu to become a better Hindu, a Muslim to become a better Muslim, a Catholic, a better Catholic. Like, she wanted everyone to deepen their own faith, whatever it may be.
That's powerful. She wasn't trying to convert anyone. She just wanted everyone to experience that deep connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another huge theme in her writings is silence. She said, prayer is born in the silence of our hearts.
Silence. It's such a precious commodity these days.
It is, isn't it? So much noise everywhere we go.
And she wasn't just talking about external quiet. She had this concept of the five silences.
Oh, wow.
Silence of the mouth, heart, eyes, ears, and mind.
A total quieting, that's a challenge.
It is. But she believed it was essential. She said, we cannot place ourselves directly in God's presence without imposing upon ourselves interior and exterior silence.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. How can we hear anything if we're constantly bombarded with noise?
Exactly. We need to create space, both internally and externally, to truly listen.
And she believed that in that silence, we can encounter God. She said, listen in silence, because if your heart is full of other things, you cannot hear the voice of God.
It's like creating a receptive space, a clearing where something else can enter.
And she actually says that, in that silence, your heart is filled with God.
Wow.
But she also recognizes that it's a journey, it's a process. She even mentions it will need much sacrifice.
Right. It takes effort to quiet the mind and tune out the distractions, but the rewards are immense.
They are.
In that silence, she said, you can hear God everywhere. In the closing of the door, in the person who needs you, in the birds that sing, in the flowers, the animals that silence, which is wonder and praise. It's like a whole new way of experiencing the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And she really believed that silence changes us. Silence gives us a new outlook on life, she wrote. In it, we are filled with the grace of God himself, which makes us do all things with joy.
That's a powerful connection, that inner stillness leading to outward joy.
And that joy, I think, really comes from that connection to something bigger than ourselves, letting go of our own ego, our own worries.
Definitely. It's about surrendering to something greater. And Mother Teresa was very clear that this surrender requires intention and effort. She wrote, often, under the pretext of humility, of trust, of abandonment, we can forget to use the strength of our will. Everything depends on these words, I will or I will not. And into the expression, I will, I must put all my energy.
So it's not just about waiting for it to happen, it's about making a conscious choice.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for our spiritual growth.
And she even said, love to pray, feel the need to pray often during the day, and take the trouble to pray. It's like creating that longing.
A longing for that connection, yeah. And she also gives some really practical advice. If you want to pray better, you must pray more.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's true. It's like anything else. The more you practice, the better you get.
Practice makes perfect,
Right.
even in prayer.
Right. And prayer, for her, wasn't just about asking for things. It was about transforming ourselves. Prayer enlarges the heart until it is capable of containing God's gift of himself, she wrote.
It's about expanding our capacity to receive love and grace.
And that, I think, leads into her idea of self-emptying. The more we empty ourselves, the more room we give God to fill us.
It's a paradox, isn't it? We have to let go of ourselves to truly receive.
It is. It's like, letting go of our ego, our desires, to make space for something greater.
It's about humility, recognizing that we are not the center of the universe.
And she, didn't sugarcoat it either. It is not how much we really have to give, but how empty we are so that we can receive fully in our life. Take away your eyes from yourself and rejoice that you have nothing, that you are nothing, that you can do nothing, she wrote. That's a powerful statement.
It is. It's about surrendering our self-importance and recognizing our dependence on something larger than ourselves.
And she used this great metaphor of wires and electricity to explain it.
Oh, right, I remember that.
She said, alone they are useless, and until the current passes through them, there will be no light. The wire is you and me. The current is God.
So we are the conduits, but the power comes from somewhere else.
Exactly. We have to allow that energy to flow through us.
And surrender to it.
Yeah. And she said, total surrender to God must come in small details, just as it comes in big details. It is nothing but that single word, yes. I accept whatever you give, and I give whatever you take.
So it's not about these grand gestures, but the everyday moments of acceptance.
Yeah. And even when we feel like we have nothing to offer, she said, when we have nothing to give, let us give him that nothingness.
It's about surrendering our pride, our sense of self-sufficiency.
So beautiful. And then, of course, there's the connection between prayer and love. Mother Teresa described our prayers as burning words coming forth from the furnace of hearts filled with love.
Wow.
And she was adamant that this love is available to everyone. Love is a fruit in season at all times and within the reach of every hand. Anyone may gather it and no limit is set, she wrote.
So we all have the potential for this kind of love.
We do. It's not some exclusive club. And she believed we cultivate it through meditation, the spirit of prayer and sacrifice, by an intense inner life.
So it's about nurturing that inner connection, that inner fire.
Yeah, and that, in turn, fuels our actions. She was very clear about that order. She said, love, to be true, has to begin with God in prayer. If we pray, we will be able to love, and if we love, we will be able to serve.
So prayer is the foundation.
It is, and that love, that overflowing love, leads to service. Mother Teresa explains, our works of charity are nothing but the overflow of our love for God from within. To work without love is slavery.
So it's not about the work itself, but the motivation behind it.
Right. It's about the love we put into it. And she even said, It is not what we do or how much we do, but how much love we put into the action, because that action is our love for God in action.
It's about bringing that love to every aspect of our lives, even the most mundane tasks.
Yeah, and she ends by saying, loving must be as normal to us as living and breathing day after day until our death. To understand this and to practice it, we need much prayer, the kind that unites us with God and overflows continually upon others. So it's this beautiful cycle.
From God to us, from us to others.
Exactly. And she leaves us with this beautiful invitation. She says, open your hearts to the love of God, which he will give you. He loves you with tenderness, and he will give you not to keep, but to share.
That's a great place to end, isn't it? It really sums up her whole message.
It does. So, we've covered a lot today, but I think the key takeaways are Mother Teresa saw prayer as a constant awareness of God's presence, not just a separate activity. The importance of silence in cultivating that connection, and how our intention and effort in prayer are key.
Absolutely.
And then that transformative idea of emptying ourselves to make space for God's grace, and how that love we cultivate through prayer naturally flows into selfless service.
It's a beautiful and practical approach to spirituality, applicable to anyone regardless of their background.
And on that note, as we finish our deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a thought. How might you incorporate even small moments of intentional connection into your day, just a pause for inner silence amidst the busyness?
That's a great question.
And how might viewing your everyday tasks, no matter how ordinary, as a form of offering, a kind of prayer in action, transform your experience of them?
I think that's something we could all reflect on.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.